Good evening. In compliance with Chapter 551 Open Meetings of the Texas Government Code, I call to order a regular voting meeting of the Austin ISD Board of Trustees Thursday, December 18th, 2025 at 6:00 p.m. A quorum of the board is physically present at Austin ISD Central Office to conduct this meeting. This meeting is being broadcast on cable channel 22 through Spectrum, Astound Broadband, and on channel 99 through AT&T Uverse. Closed captioning in English is available on these platforms for individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing. Welcome, and thank you for joining us. We will first move to public testimony for items on the consent agenda. This is an opportunity for the board to take part in listening to our community. While we wish we could respond or provide feedback, the Texas Open Meetings Act does not authorize a board to discuss or act on comments or complaints from members of the public if the subject is not on the meeting agenda. Members of the public wishing to participate in the public testimony portion of our meeting called a dedicated Austin ISD phone line in advance of the meeting to sign up to speak in person or to audio record their remarks. Tonight, we have 3 people who signed up to speak in person, and we have 5 who left a recorded message. We will begin tonight with in-person testimony. To provide as many opportunities for input as possible within a limited time period at this meeting, each speaker will be allotted 1 minute. No substitutions or yielding of time to others is permitted. Callers who signed up to speak in person are invited to come to the microphone when your name is called. As you come to the microphone, please press the button to turn it on. A device will light up as you move through your allotted time. When the buzzer sounds, please make a final thought in 1 sentence. We ask that whether you come to give a complaint or praise, that you reference any staff member by position or abbreviated last name. And we ask that all audience members, whether speaking or not, please show respect for others at all times. Our in-person speakers for tonight are Steve Swanson, Jesse Newfield, and Amy Moore.
Good evening. I'm Steve Swanson, speaking on agenda item 8.1, the district scorecard. Remember the last board meeting when discussing our unsatisfactory school planning, a board member said, it means the entire future of the school district is on the shoulders of the students of these 3 middle schools on the STAR testing day, which is a lot of pressure, not the future I, the board member, hope for. Unsatisfactory school planning and the entire future of our school district rests on my shoulders. The shoulders of those who know we do not follow law for preventing harm in our schools, and the shoulders of our legal and administrative professionals. Stop school planning and start a scorecard to help our lawyers and superintendents fulfill their responsibilities in the rules of professional conduct, the requirements for the superintendent's certificate, and in Chapter 11 of the Texas Education Code for planning. Reach out to our local university for help in learning. Also, we are required to hold TEA accountable, not be an excuse. I welcome your questions, and I have a handout for you that you'll get at the end of the meeting. I hope you have a chance to read it. Thank you.
There you go.
Hi, can you hear me? Thanks. My name is Jesse Newfield. I'm a proud AISD parent, PTA board member, and co-founder of ATX 116, and I'm here to speak on agenda item 9.3. I appreciate all your work on the budget. Education is oxygen, and public schools are the lungs of our democracy. It's how we breathe life into our culture, our economy, and our shared future. In Texas, this belief is foundational. Public education is written into our state's constitution. Our founders saw public education as something requiring shared responsibility, a necessity worthy of protection and investment. They knew that knowledge was, quote, essential to the preservation of the rights and liberties of the people, and therefore made it the duty of the state to ensure, quote, suitable provision for the support and maintenance of public schools. Despite this, public education in Texas is under attack due to systematic defunding, a broken accountability system, and policies that prioritize control over support and student success. We must push back on these attacks through strategic and coordinated engagement, advocacy, and investment in our schools. Community members, please consider what you are willing to contribute in the coming year. time, money, engagement to ensure that our children and our public schools flourish. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Amy Moore, community member and parent of 3 AISD grads, speaking tonight about item 8.1, the district scorecard. Thank you for finding and correcting the data for CPM 1.2. Even though we're compelled to use faulty tests on a scorecard, they do highlight a couple of things. I believe the 30 to 40 point gaps in literacy, numeracy, and CCMR on our scorecard persisting within our subgroups well into 2029 will make our community want to show up to work alongside AISD to ensure equity and to support all children on their educational journey so we can keep TEA out of our community. You keep talking about doing hard things together, so I urge you to engage and energize our community in the tough academic work ahead. Make it easy to volunteer or tutor on a TAP campus or donate at a fundraiser at a campus needing extra support. Austin won't go quietly while TEA is on its harmful takeover spree across Texas, but we need a little direction. Make it streamlined and easy, and the community will be there. And lastly, I just want to say thanks to all of you for your hard work this year. It's definitely been the hardest in my 23 years in AISD.
Thank you to our in-person speakers, and we now will play the recorded messages for public testimony, so please listen carefully.
Karen Bain, the parent of 2 AISD graduates. I'm calling on agenda item 8.1, updates to the scorecard. I'm glad to see efforts to ensure that our scorecard targets and tracking are accurate and based on clean data, and encourage the board to approve this measure. I also hope we don't drop the conversation about increasing some of the targets overall, so we can work towards closing the gaps between student groups instead of perpetuating them. This conversation would not only be responsive to community vision and values, it also helps us focus our attention on academic outcomes that are critical to the success of our forthcoming TAP plans. Everything we do has got to contribute to the success of those TAPs. The future of our district depends on it. Thank you.
Marie, parent, once again, there's not enough information in the board docs about several items. It says information pending without attachments, including for 10.1 and 11.1. We're all reading the tea leaves. It's not transparent. I think it violates Open Meetings Act. As far as the staffing contracts and funding those, the district is proposing paying $30,000 to $100,000 to do a private search for a deputy superintendent. And we don't need a deputy superintendent. We have all the superintendents in the world and 148 people with the title director. I have a problem with a closed search and $30,000 to $100,000 for a $300,000 deputy superintendent while we're taking money away from East Austin campuses that are on the verge of failing and already understaffed but cannot get the staffing that they're requesting from the district, and money is being taken away from them. $6,000, $10,000. Other campuses have far larger numbers being taken from them.
My name is Daphne Hofbecker. I'm an AISD mom and a longtime public education advocate. I support the scorecard changes that TEA has required, and I think it's important for all of us to know a little bit about TEA. In the 1980s, standardized testing was introduced and given at the beginning of the school year as a way to help teachers understand the summer slide. In the early 90s, testing was moved to the end of the school year, and Texas teachers suddenly became responsible for the failures of our society. At the same time, the commissioner position went from one appointed by the elected state school board to an appointment by the governor. I encourage you to look up 2 articles so you can make your own connections about the goals of the current TEA. The first is an August 29th, 2014 article written for the Dallas Journal called D. The second is a Texas Tribune article written December 16th, 2015 about the commissioner's goals when he was appointed commissioner. Read these and you'll understand why it's so important that we all join forces as a community and make sure they do not invade AISD the way they are actively invading other districts across the state.
Hi, my name is Shannon Davenport. I'm an elementary parent of 2. I'm calling today about agenda item 10.1. The district is asking for an additional $15 million for bond-related consultant services, saying that earlier building estimates were very preliminary and that the true condition of many buildings is still being figured out. But just a few weeks ago, AISD used building condition data as a main reason to justify closing non-TAP schools, treating that data as solid enough to make permanent decisions. My question is, how can the district use building condition data to justify school closures while also saying that the same data is still incomplete and changing? What actual confirmed savings have come from the school closures approved so far, and how do those savings compare to the new consultant costs the district is now looking to bring in? And finally, how does AISD plan to handle these major facilities changes while also focusing on the urgent academic needs at TAP schools? Why hasn't the district taken a harder look at cost-saving strategies like retaining teachers and general retention, especially when we're seeing how much attrition is hurting middle school test scores?
This is Nikki Schubitz, parent. I'm calling about data-informed decision-making. On the scorecard, goals 1 and 2 look at second grade numeracy intervention and literacy intervention. I would encourage you all to report out disaggregated data by all of these student groups by campus and at every grade level. The board presentations provided focus very tightly on the goals, but I think that for system-wide change, which is what we have been talking about, more information is needed to know how students are performing in these spaces. Also, at turnaround campuses, particularly the elementary schools, knowing where they are at the middle of the year is needed. Those scores are out. I know that they were not provided during the info session, but they are available. And so I encourage you guys to ask for that information as soon as possible because the community is looking for data-informed decision-making. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes our public testimony. Please feel free to share any general comments or questions with the board by email at trustees@austinisd.org. And we will now move on to the president's report. This evening, I would like to share an update regarding the Lone Star Governance coaching the board has been engaging in pursuant to the TEA agreed order. Since November 2023, Ms. Ashley Paz of the Council of the Great City Schools has served as our Lone Star Governance coach. That was a 2-year contract that accompanies a 2-year Lone Star Governance training cycle. And that contract concluded last month. We also just received certificates documenting our completion of a 2-year Lone Star Governance training program. And we are now currently reviewing and considering options for Lone Star Governance coaching moving forward. And we would like to thank Ms. Paz for her guidance and support throughout this process. As we approach winter break, we want to take a moment to thank everyone, our students, our teachers, our staff, our families, our partners, and our community for your support and your dedication this school year and for choosing and loving our schools. We hope the upcoming break gives you time to recharge and enjoy the company of family, friends, and community. And please note the district will be closed starting tomorrow, December 22nd. Staff will return on Monday, January 5th. Oh, sorry, not tomorrow, on Monday, December 22nd. Staff will return on Monday, January 5th, and we're excited to welcome our students back the following day, Tuesday, January 6th, as we continue to build on this school year's success. Our next item is committee reports. We've posted the written committee report as an attachment to this item on our board docs agenda, and it's a committee report from the board's audit committee. And next up is our superintendent report.
All right. Thank you. Good evening, President Boswell, members of the board. As part of the superintendent's report tonight, my team and I will provide a transition plan update, and then we'll transition at the end of that, towards the end of the presentation, to discuss kind of next steps as we consider the spring semester and the work moving forward. And so joining me, I have G.A. Kimbatra, Executive Director of Board Services, Policy and Compliance, Yvette Cadenas, Executive Director of Academic Programs, Victoria O'Neill, Executive Director of Family Experience and Enrollment, and Denisha Presley, Senior Executive Director of Talent Strategy. And so as we get going here, we have it pulled up. Just want to communicate to our board and our families that, you know, through the transitions of consolidations and turnaround plans, it's really important that we create a vision and we ensure that everything we do is in alignment with our families and with our community. And so that's really been our focus. And so as we move to the next slide, it's important to show kind of what elements we are considering. We want to make sure that we're transparent. We're communicating what is informing our decisions. We are identifying, what access looks like and ensuring that's equitable, maintaining continuity through the process, And certainly, as we look at adjustments, preserving elements, culture, and all the things that make our schools just incredible. And when we take on large efforts like this, there are lots of things that we have to put in place. And one of the things that we do is put together a transition team. And so the project manager of the transition team is G.A. Kimbatra, who's here, going to present here in a moment. We also identify project leads. These are individuals that assist the project manager. And it's really important that this team has a direct line to the superintendent's office and myself to ensure that, I'm removing any barriers to the work. When you have large efforts like this, being responsive, allocating resources when appropriate, and ensuring that we're responsive to community need requires that type of intentionality. This method is something we've used before. We used it most recently with the TEA agreed order and special education. So it has been proven to be successful, but I wanted to communicate to everyone the team that's going to be tasked with this work. We also have a steering committee that's been pulled together. It's important that any idea, any consideration goes to this group. We pull in resources throughout our district to ensure that the work is aligned. We have lots of different types of meetings over the duration of the effort. Some of them are obviously steering committee meetings. We have vertical team leader meetings. We have meetings with our principals during our check-ins, but we're also being really intentional in having meetings with our principals one-on-one and in small groups as we move through the process. And as always, it's really important that we connect with our advisory committees. We will do this over the duration of this effort, but it's really important to name those ones who are likely to kind of influence because of their role in the advisory kind of realm for the district. As we move forward, you can see that we are being very intentional about how we engage. We have lots of stakeholders that are part of the work, bringing them in closely, making sure that we're aligned, being responsive is absolutely part of who we are. You can see those listed below on the slide. It's also very, very important that our community understands that each engagement process is going to be tailored to the community that is being impacted. And so it's going to look a little bit different. So as we build up the transition plans, you may see a series of meetings in this community look a little bit differently in a different community, and that's okay. That's exactly what we expect. This will require some additional resources, some partners to ensure that we're thoughtful, we're responsive in how we engage. Certainly we have a strong team, but given kind of the scale and the work ahead, we feel we're confident that we're going to need some additional support. And it's always important that we are accessible, we translate all documents, and we create opportunities for families to engage with us throughout the entire effort. And so you can see here different emails that have been and domains that have been created that we'll use consistently through the process to ensure that we have kind of one location where all the information is moving and being received. So now I'll hand it over to GA to take us through some of the focus areas within the transition plans. Go ahead, GA.
Good evening, President Boswell, trustees, and Superintendent Segura. My name is G.A. Kimbatra, Executive Director of Board Services, Policy and Compliance, and also the project lead for this transition work. I do want to share that it is an honor to serve as a transition lead for the school district, and I also want to acknowledge that school closures and consolidations are very deeply painful and difficult for our students, families, staff, and broader school communities. I do not take the responsibility lightly of this work, and I firmly believe that transition work is both hard work and hard work, and it must be approached with care, compassion, and respect to ensure that all those impacted are supported throughout the process. So as you can see on this slide, the foundation of the 5 focus areas that you see is driven by our belief that this work must be balanced. And you will notice that 3 of the 5 focused areas are people-centered: students, families, community, and staff, reflecting our district's commitment to prioritizing the well-being of people and the communities we serve. So for the students and families, we'll prioritize mental health and academic transitions while ensuring clear connections and consistent information between sending and receiving schools. We also recognize that each of our campuses has its own unique culture, history, and legacy that we want to recognize. So principals will collaborate with the district transition team, myself, to identify key partners and establish campus-based transition teams, ensuring that engagement efforts are led by school leaders as well as the informed community members. Enrollment is a significant part of the family experiences, so particularly for families at 11 impacted schools. And later in the presentation, Victoria O'Neill will share a dedicated slide outlining our enrollment efforts and the supports in place to assist families through the process. For staff transition, it'll be a shared priority for both the talent strategies and transition team as we support staff members through transitions to new placements, continued access to licensed mental health professionals, employee assistance programs, and internal support services will remain in place to ensure care, stability, and well-being. Lastly, we'll address operations and logistics to ensure the thoughtful transition and repurposing of all the resources. So here is an overview of the transition planning roadmap. As shown at the bottom of the slide, the engagement opportunities and enrollment efforts will take place throughout the spring semester. In recognition of the unique identity of each campus, events and activities, just like Superintendent Segura shared, will be thoughtfully designed and implemented to meet individual campus needs while honoring and celebrating their legacies. Also, the transition steering committee that was referenced earlier has been formally established and has already convened twice since we returned from the Thanksgiving break. And in addition, we have completed the Campus Toolkit for Care for Campus Leaders, which is an internal resource developed by a bridge team led by Dr. LaShonda Lewis. This toolkit has been shared with principals at transition campuses, and it provides practical, actionable strategies to support students, staff, and communities. We're also in the process of developing a comprehensive transition plan booklet to serve as a resource for all invested partners, with an anticipated completion date in mid-January. Also, during the week of February 6th, the impacted families will be receiving informal assignment notifications from our enrollment office, and the board will continue to receive regular updates throughout the spring semester as indicated on the map. So these are some examples of the documents referenced on the previous slide. The first document shown is a sample of the campus-specific support tracker, which is individualized to meet the needs of each campus. The second document that you see is a preview of the comprehensive transition plan booklet currently in development. And lastly, the third document is a campus toolkit for care for campus leaders. So also over the last 3 weeks, as a transition team lead, I visited 18 impacted campus principals individually at their campuses. These meetings were hard, but they have not only been informative, but also a powerful reminder to anchor our work in care and compassion. As we move forward, it is essential that we continue to do this hard work while also ensuring we complete all of our deliverables we have promised to our students, families, staff, and communities.
Hi, good evening, Board of Trustees and Superintendent Segura. My name is Victoria O'Neill, and I'm the Executive Director of Family Experience and Enrollment. I'm here to talk a little bit about the transition support, specifically in the enrollment realm. In the short month that we've had since the November 20th vote, we have been continuing to listen to community feedback and make adjustments where needed. In particular, some areas of adjustments that have been made is a commitment to the continuation of dual language programming, and that commitment was there and has been refined and communicated to all of our families and constituents. And so the baseline is that if there is a student who is currently participating in dual language, they will be supported to find a seat to continue in dual language in Austin ISD. We have also confirmed that if a transfer is necessary to be offered to Northeast Early College High School for current international high school students, that will be provided along with transportation. A good percentage of the students currently enrolled at international are already zoned to Northeast, but if they are not, they will be allowed to continue until they graduate from 12th grade. We have sent beginning on December 9th, a family information survey to the 11 impacted schools, particularly aimed at the students in pre-K to 4th grade, and the 6th and 7th graders, as the 5th and 8th graders are at a natural transition point and will be moving to their next level of schooling. And so we have defined the affected student group as those who cannot simply re-enroll at the same campus that they have been attending this year and perhaps in years past. Which means that the new thing that I'm here to share is the establishment and of particular dates for our next step, which would be a transition enrollment round. And this will be outside of the Enroll Austin system. It will run in parallel. Final confirmation will need to come through the Enroll Austin system. But from now until January 12th, we will be analyzing the family interest survey so that we can design the best enrollment ranking survey possible for the students and their families. That survey will be open from January 12th to January 23rd. And we will be working with our school administrators and our district support employees to reach out to students who have received, families who have received this survey, and in an attempt to get the most complete and best data set that we can. Then from January 23rd to February 6th, the district staff in my department, and leaning on others for their assistance and expertise as well, we will process the responses and, if necessary, use lotteries and the established priorities that have been published to create preliminary placements for students. From February 9th to February 13th, families will receive an informal assignment notification via email, and this is the extended timeline for that is that it is a pretty manual process. We will be looking for efficiencies, but in the end, the emails will go out. Families will still need to register and enroll Austin during the designated window to receive their official assignment email and complete their annual registration forms. We get a lot of very important information from the annual registration forms, both for operational, safety, and student data management reasons. And so we will still be working to support all students. Next month, I look forward to coming back and talking a lot more about general enrollment for the whole district. And then we can go to the next slide. So we have been providing one-to-one conversations with district staff from enrollment, multilingual education, special education, and family engagement at the campuses that are affected by closure. Those have, you can see the ones with the green checks. Those are the ones that have happened already, and the ones that are coming up in January are listed there as well. We have really valued these conversations. We've gotten really important feedback. I hope that we have been able to reassure folks along the way. Now that the new survey will be coming out, there might be a little bit of a pivot. We will be directly supporting folks who come once it's open for the last couple of events. And so we are responding to the situation as things evolve. And we provide a campus-specific informational flyer in both English and Spanish, and the district enrollment timeline, and talk about the options that each individual family has. And each individual family does have a unique set of options because of their place of residence and their where they are in their educational journey and the hopes and desires they have for their students.
Good evening. I'm excited to share a high-level view of what's happening in talent strategy and just in ways that we're supporting our employees through this process. Early this semester, our talent strategy leadership team visited over 40 campuses, and at these campuses, we presented a draft plan for transition in talent strategy. And what was incredibly valuable about these visits is we were able to gather feedback from our employees and make adaptations in our plan that we believe will better fit the needs of our employees. On November 21st, we sent out a survey. It's our preference survey, and this went to every employee in the district. We're currently sitting at about 1,700, a little over 1,700 responses. And in this survey, of course, we ask for identifying information, your name, your certification, what grade level you teach, what grade levels you aspire to teach. But then we go a little bit deeper and ask our employees, and what district might you want to work within our city? And then we can drill down into which campuses. One of the things that I think is most valuable about this survey is once we identify those things, we asked, initially we wanted to rank. Give us your top 3 campuses where you might want to serve in our community. And from the feedback that we received from our employees, we learned that where our employees serve our students and our families, it's so much deeper than just which campus. And so what we've did is we have an open-ended space where we can really identify, or where our employees can really share with us what's most important to them. And we're learning that, sometimes it's programmatic. We want to work at a campus that is offering dual language services, and then sometimes it's about where my own personal child goes to school, and I either want to be on that campus or somewhere near. And so then the survey will close on January 5th at the end of the day, and we will spend the week aggregating this data, and we'll share it with our principals by January 9th. And so when our principals get this information, and they'll make contacts with the employees who have identified them or their campuses as places they might want to serve in our community. And the beauty of having that the information that's on the survey is that it's not just a call about where do you want to come and teach. It's, oh, I see that your child goes to school at my school, or your child goes to school near my campus, and that's important to you. So let's have a conversation about whether this is a great match or not. And if the employee has the first right of refusal, if they choose not to attend or match with that particular principal, we will have 2 internal only match fairs, one in February and one in March. And then after that, we'll open up our district-wide transfer opportunities. And so open transfer will start in March. That'll go through April. And then at April, which I didn't mention, that we'll be in a hiring freeze starting January 5th. Then we open up in April to external candidates who might be interested in working and serving in our community if there are vacancies still available. I do want to share before we wrap up with talent strategy, we identified a few themes that we've seen in the survey so far. And again, we're not aggregating the data because employees still have an opportunity to make changes over the break and edit their responses. But we are just kind of monitoring and seeing what's there. And so the themes that you see, these are the things that we've identified that are most important to our employees. Community, passion for bilingual education came up several times. Geographic areas and or limiting our commutes. And then the commitment for professional growth. And so we're seeing teachers who have recently received their administrative certifications who are asking, who are saying, I'm also interested in serving as an assistant principal in our district. And so I'll leave you, I won't read the quotes to you, but I'll leave you with a few quotes that we pulled that really dig deep into or speak to what's most important and what's valued in our employees.
Thank you, Tanisha and team. I know this is like a longer presentation, but I think it's probably appropriate to take a pause and just respond to any questions around this specific area of the work, and then transition into inviting Dr. Maxwell up for the next portion of the presentation, if that's okay with the trustees. Perfect.
Trustee Hunter.
Thank you for those of you who have given the presentation thus far. Thank you for acknowledging what a lot of our families are feeling with the meetings. I do want to find a bright spot in the meetings, and that is I want to thank Principal Farr and the parent community at Wynn. They sort of had heard how the meetings were going, and they said, not here, we do things differently, and they set up a really great system for parents to be able to come in and talk. They provided snacks. They had conversations with parents to be like, hey, what's it like at this school? What are you thinking about doing? And I think that that's important because you guys are doing great work, but you don't know each individual community like those parents and the principals do. And so I want to thank the WIN community for being able to sort of lead out in that. I do have some questions about registration. So I heard a lot of steps, and I really want it to be clear for parents because it sounds like to me no matter whether you're in one of the 11 schools or you're just a regular parent, you still need to go through, or not a regular parent, but just doing regular old enrollment. Everybody still needs to do enroll, Austin, and registration. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you. That is correct. The importance of collecting annual re-registration from every student is really hard to overstate. Just, the health updates and the family contact updates and factors about students such as, foster care or a military parent, some of those things we need updates on. And so completing that re-registration paperwork is really important. We have some new things coming this year. We will be inaugurating a community mentor program and an opt-in enrollment communication system. And so we are looking to build additional supports into the system to meet our goal of re-registering 64,153 pre-K through 11th graders by April 10th. And yes, we also have done some updates in the Enroll Austin system, a complete readability audit and revisions there in an attempt to make things as seamless as possible for our families.
I want to continue to use my time well. So everybody needs to sign up no matter what. It would be really great, I think, for our families if somewhere there was like step 1, everybody register. Step 2, if you're in this group, do this thing. If you're in that group, do that thing. So that everybody kind of knows like what I should be doing. I see on the slide, and I didn't take note of it, I apologize. It said, and conduct lotteries. Are we just talking about like for the schools that have applications, or what are we having a lottery for?
It's for transfer requests. Every single student in Austin has a home campus. They have a guaranteed seat at their zoned campus or reassigned campus by address. If students would like to apply to attend a different campus on a transfer, then if there are more applications than there are seats available, then we would use a lottery system.
Okay, but this does not apply, or I guess I should ask you if this applies to the bilingual the dual language, and does it apply to SPED? Okay. So I don't think we can lottery those seats.
No, I can absolutely address that. I wanted to give Yvette an opportunity if she wanted to jump in on the dual language piece.
Okay.
If you are attending your zoned campus and that campus has a dual language program, you have a guaranteed seat for emergent bilinguals in that dual language program. And non-emergent bilinguals are welcome to join the program up to the program capacity. And for special education, the vast majority of our students are served at their zoned campus. There are some centralized placements. If there is a particular program on an elementary campus, then an ARD committee can recommend that a student attend a program at a nearby campus. And again, like lotteries only come into play for transfers.
Okay. We get a lot of email, and I'm not sure that you guys get the same email, but the email that we get at this point is, you closed our school, we need to go where we want to go. And I think we need to be really clear with parents, because what you just said is a new understanding for me. I didn't have that understanding previously. And so I think a lot of our parents still don't have that understanding, because they're like, well, there's 5 schools. You only gave me 2 choices. Well, here's why we're giving you those 2 choices. I think that's important, because I'm reading my email like right now, and that is not clear for people. So I think that's important. I think if someone is receiving special education services, it needs to be clear also for them. However those meetings go, I just, like if it's in the art committee meeting, the transition art, whatever it is, like it needs to be really, really clear so that people can make good decisions, right? Hope that they choose us, but they need to have that information so they can make good choices. And then, I'm at 5 minutes. Lottery, SPED, registration. That was it. Thank you.
So just quickly, Trustee Hunter, I won't take too much time. One of the things that we heard through the process and our commitment to giving families assurances as to where they're going to be was to add in the February 9th through February 13th informal assignment. That is a new thing. That's something that hasn't been there before. We certainly recognize that waiting all the way till March 13th would have been a lot of time for little uncertainty. And so for the schools that are going through the transition, we're asking they fill out the survey because, yes, they have options, but the option they pick is going to impact kind of what seats remain. And so that information is helpful, which is why they're prioritized. We're going to go through the work and then in early February be able to tell them, hey, Matthias, we understand you have these 3 options, but you selected this. We have a seat for you. And they are prioritized in that manner in this effort for those 11 schools. So that is it. It is different. It's responsive to what we heard, and I think it really provides assurances before the entire system begins to catch up with the enrollment process as a whole.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Trustee Singh.
I wanted to ask you, Superintendent, what is our target? What is our enrollment target for next year, particularly for the schools that have closed or have undergone consolidations?
Utilization target or enrollment? I wouldn't be able to tell you off the top of my head, without the information in front of me, what the target enrollment is.
But like, do you guys have a sense of like, okay, we don't want to lose more than
we don't want to lose
X
anybody.
percent?
I mean,
but like a serious like target, looking at like historical numbers and saying, okay, this campus typically we lose or we gain X percent of students per year, and then setting up a target for next year to help create that North Star?
I think we can develop that. I think looking at past years without the disruption of a consolidation is going to be maybe not give us the whole story. Mm-hmm. I can think through a methodology. It sounds to me like you're wanting to say, Matthias, like what is the enrollment target for Sanchez, right? And then maybe perhaps out of the number of students that were previously at a school that's going through disruption, what percent are retained within Austin ISD and what that target is. Mm-hmm. I don't want anybody to think that we do not want every family to come back. So I'd be, I think if someone said, well, why is it not 100% opposed to 95%, it would be a difficult question to ask. I think let me think about how to respond to that in a way that allows me to track it in a way that doesn't send the wrong message. I do not want anybody to think that we are prepared or wanting to lose any family through this process, but we know there will be disruptions. And we also know that there are going to be families who actually choose us now, or choose Austin ISD because of some of the changes that we're seeing. I fully expect families that have access to a different school than had previously to come back, and we're seeing some of that as well. So I'd have to, let me think about how to respond to that.
Okay.
But I think I know where you're going with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really hard for us to really judge. I mean, I appreciate seeing like all the steps. Clearly, there's a lot of thought in there, but just like we ask our teachers and our students, like it's really clear what we're working towards.
Yeah.
And I just don't see that clarity. So like, let's say a year from now, how will I know that we have been, or like in August, how will we know that we have been successful in this plan? Like, if we lose 50% of our students from these campuses, we know we have not been successful. If we have gained, 10%, we know we have been very successful. So I'm looking for like a number somewhere between those two.
I think what we can do is maybe create a set of ranges by band. Because one question I would have is, well, if a school has 2 things occurring, one is retaining the students that are there and one is inviting students from a different program, I would say retaining the students that are currently there at a higher, if it's 98% of the students that were there or retained there, that would be significant. But then you may have a school that's kind of coming in, and so I just have to think through what it looks like for each school.
And so I don't know if other trustees are interested in that because it sounds like an effort to do that. But is there interest?
I can better define success. I think I can do that for sure.
Could I jump in? Because really the main question that I have, and then I'll pass it right back to Trustee Singh. I think it would be really, really productive to have some form of after-action report after we've done all of this so that we can look at some of those metrics. I can understand the difficulty of looking back historically, particularly with a pandemic so recently. I do think considering future efforts or even 10 years from now, we're talking about the cycling through some of these things. If we can establish some good data throughout this process so that we can look back and say, do the lessons learned, what would we do differently, but in a way that's meaningful for using it for future efforts as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and so go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I would love to say yes to the after-action report to really understand what the impacts were, where we did it well, where we can improve our systems, what the savings were, what the impact to enrollment was, what the impact to achievement might be, all of it. And I know it's a complicated system. And then Trustee Singh, to your point about having an understanding of how many students we expect to come back next year, that's a really essential number we need for budgeting.
I know, yeah, exactly.
And I think, to me, we're about to start talking about our budget in January. That is a very important role of the board, done in collaboration with the administration. And I do want to have really thoughtful numbers as we start talking about that, especially because we had the big enrollment hit this year that we're going to have to take account for, that we've seen all over the state, all over the country, of students, largely students with families who are immigrants.
I appreciate that. And, I do, so I expect that, especially, so I'm a little confused because we did have a number of projected savings from doing the consolidations, and I would assume that we had some assumptions in there about enrollment too. So if enrollment was not part of that calculation, then it needs to be, because the whole point of a lot of this was, we started with a $30 million savings per year. I want to get back to that, and I want to see the actual math, and I think we really owe it to our public to show the math. Again, we didn't do that last time in 2019. We have to do it going forward, and a critical part of that is showing the enrollment numbers.
Yeah, so yes to the I won't say postmortem, but yes to the after-action report. I think on the enrollment, so we created a sensitivity analysis on the enrollment projections that were tied to the consolidations. So that was the case because it was hard to say, well, Matthias, it's going to be 5% versus 10%, because in my experience, I've received information where it may suggest that it's going to be a much higher number, and then we go through it and it's actually a much lower number. So what I can do is maybe communicate what I believe success looks like through this process from an enrollment perspective, from an implementation perspective, right, which is one of the things from a KPI perspective. I want to make sure we are hitting the metrics along the way. So let me do that. I think I can develop kind of what is I would deem as successful, what is good, and what I think would be
really
not a good outcome.
Thank you.
But it may not be school specific. It may be total student move specific, because if one school doesn't fill up, but you don't lose any students,
For sure. I would like to see both, because that's how we as trustees can kind of stay in our lane and see that things are moving in a direction without micromanaging, right? I just need to be comfortable knowing that you guys do have targets for each, even if it's a range. This would be bad, this would be good, and this is what's in between for each school, so that we can track. So I think that would be really super helpful. And really, for me, an expectation. I also did want to ask you, again, I so appreciate what the staff has done, and I think you probably, you've listed out really clearly all the work that you're going to be doing to engender these relationships with families and really help them through the process, so thank you for that. But when I look at this, it is very HQ staff-centric, which is fine, because you need that, because this is our HQ staff. But I also would like to know what metrics you as a superintendent are using, or what KPIs you are looking at, in addition to, okay, did we check off all the January tasks, February? Think of this from the perspective of a parent or a guardian, a student, what student and family metrics or KPIs are you using to know if this transition has been successful? And by that, I mean, how many families would you think would give us a high satisfaction rating for the enrollment process? How many families do you think would say that it is easy for them to visit campuses that they are considering? How long does it take a typical family to register their student if they are a first-time enrollee to the district? How much time does it take them if they are a returning family? And really think about like what we're up against with charters and private schools and how easy it is at some of them, not all of them, but like really, we've talked about this, so none of this is new, but now I want to see some like teeth into this and really understand what our families are experiencing and how you as superintendent are going to ensure that they're having a positive experience with this.
Yeah, thank you for that, Trustee Singh. So the way that you're thinking is the way that I think. I think maybe a year ago we were talking about, what the only measure that matters really to me is how long it takes for a family to get through the registration process. Like, how many minutes is it? Just talk. Let's understand from our family's experience how they engage with us. So there are different metrics that we can track. There are things that are being done right now as part of the overall enrollment effort. I would say that some of those KPIs are going to be carried in that effort. This sub-effort here, which is tied to transitions, I think will have its own set of metrics. Now, a key performance indicator is usually typically a rate or some kind of performance against some baseline. I think what we're going to have to do is kind of set our internal target and then go against it, which wouldn't be quite a KPI. It'd be a performance target. But I think I know what you're talking about. We've talked about it. I haven't put that in a codified document. But that's something that we definitely can do. It is something that we intend to do, but, it's kind of more of a January task, but I can move that up and maybe have a presentation or an update in early January.
That would be great. I would love to request the officers to kind of consider when we could get that on the calendar for one of our
We'll
board
just do
meetings.
it as an update, because we're going to be given updates along the way. We'll just make that a component of the update. And then we have an enrollment overall update in January as well. I think it's January, right? Yeah, January.
Great. And the last question I have is regarding special education. And just, I see that we have an email address for the dual language transition and a general one. And, considering, so many of our students are going to be having to undergo the transition arts and all that. Like, do you know what percentage of the families have already had a contact, like a conversation with a staff person? I know Dr. Lee you had sent me the number of I can't remember what it was. It was like
Yeah, I can't tell you the percent.
It was a lot of kids, but I wanted to know, and this is part of the family-centered KPIs, which is like what percentage of our families who are going to have a child going through a transition ARD have had a one-on-one contact with somebody an expert who can help them understand what's actually going on, what to expect, and what supports are going to be in place for their child.
Well, I can't tell you that at this,
No.
I don't have that information.
I don't expect that at this moment,
But that's something that we certainly can provide as we move through the process. And again, back to whether it's a KPI or, that actually would be, I think, a KPI based on how we would define it. But I can work with Dr. Cherry Lee and then establish, one or two metrics that we can use as we monitor progress. That's a really good one.
Okay.
I'd have to define what contact looks like.
Yeah.
But
you do your process thing. I'm just saying, and again, I'm not trying to create more paperwork. I'm actually just trying to create like a really quick and easy way for us as trustees to know that things are happening.
No, I appreciate that.
Okay.
That's what we want.
Thank you.
Thank you. Additional questions or comments? Trustee Kaufman.
Well, simple question is why is MEAC not included in the advisory committee engagement list?
It's not by intentional.
It should have been. It was mentioned in our planning meeting. Yes, we'll add that. Yes, it's an oversight. And they've been already engaging in many conversations around the policies.
Okay, thank you. And when I list, when we read through the list of the names of the schools that are impacted, I just really, my heart goes out to everyone who's impacted by it, and I know yours does as well, but I really just want to, restate what you already know, which is the importance of approaching this with that compassion and a true understanding that regardless of the family circumstances, we've made promises that we're not necessarily keeping. And so we have to respect that and do the very best we can to keep the promises to the best of our ability. So appreciate the work that's going into it.
Additional questions or comments? Trustee Valici.
Hi. So I am hearing that there's still a lot of confusion around the process, and this presentation I don't think has cleared up any of the questions. I'm going to do my best to address those questions, but since from the perspective of families at those schools, which I'm not one, so I apologize. So I got an email from, and you said very, very quickly when Trustee Hunter asked you, like, are students at the closing two-way dual language schools guaranteed a spot in dual language at their zone campus? Very quickly you said, if they are emergent bilingual, yes. If they're classified, if they are not emergent bilingual, then what?
Sorry about that. So if a student is currently in a dual language program and their zone campus has dual language programming, they will have continuation of programming at that school, whether they're emergent bilingual or non-emergent bilingual. If they are participating in dual language, again, they're being impacted, and their zone campus has dual language, then we will staff accordingly, like we'll go. What may, one thing to consider also, though, I'm just going to put this, is of course building capacity as we look. So that would be something kind of beyond, but most of the schools would be able to accommodate that. And we will look for solutions. Like, we truly have a commitment to make sure that all of the dual language students are going to have a seat.
And I hear that, but I think if you're a parent and your school just closed and you don't know, you're hearing like, what I would be hearing right now is I am not guaranteed a seat, a program continuation seat at my zone campus. That's what I'm hearing.
That is what we want to do. That is our commitment. So if a campus has dual language programming and the student is dual language, whether they're emergent bilingual or non-emergent bilingual, we want to offer continuation of programming at that school. Like, that is what we're planning for.
Okay, so I'll ask the superintendent. I think families need some stability and some goodwill. So if you feel confident that you can do it, I think they need to hear that. And they need to, there's just a lot of trust has been like eroded in this process. And these are families with little kids that need some help. Because I mean, I'm making my own spreadsheets to see if there's room. So I'm sure the district can do that. If we said if every single one of these families went to their zone school, would there be room?
And this is where the guarantee gets difficult. We are very close to being able to say that, to do that. We moved up the commitment to early February. It's really helpful to understand what our families want, because right now some of them have many options. And based on those options, that's going to inform whether I can guarantee or not. If 99% of one school goes to one other school, that's going to have an impact on our ability to guarantee. Now, based on what we're seeing, we're very, 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 very confident. It's just not quite. We don't have enough information from our families because some of them have 3 or 4 options, and so that is what I think is keeping us from being able to say guarantee. But as Yvette said, we are. If you're in the attendance boundary and you are either emergent bilingual or non-emergent bilingual, but you're in the program, you will continue. You will have a seat. The only way we can't even really quantify the way that would not occur, but there's a couple instances where if every single family between multiple schools all select the same school, then that could create a challenge for us. That is why it's really hard to say guarantee at this moment. That's what we're striving towards. We're getting very close. But I do want to be very clear that it's if you're in the program, emergent bilingual or not, you will have the ability to continue on in your assigned school. But that's what I'm trying to get to, Trustee Willie-Chu. Okay. I'm trying to get to guarantee. I'm very, very close, but I can't.
And so getting some preliminary information December that's due tomorrow, or that's
We're opening it through January 5th, correct?
Okay.
What was it? Sorry.
So the intent survey is actually open until January 23rd. But we're going to replace it with the new survey that's coming out that's kind of a transition registration, if you will.
Yep.
And that one opens, Victoria?
Opens January 12th and closes January 23rd. And so we started with the family information survey that was received, and in the analysis of that data and continuing to receive feedback, we have decided to make things much more specific. And so it is a more specific survey that will be going out where families will have a list of all of the campuses in the district that apply to their grade level and programs, and be able to rank up to 7 of them.
And then I'm seeing a list, so when it says every school that has a dual language program, and this could be like an old list, when I'm pulling up dual language campuses in Austin ISD and looking at the list that was given, are there some that are not the same? And I could ask about specific campuses if.
Yes, if you could please tell me just a little bit more.
Okay, so is Andrews, if I am zoned to Andrews and I'm not emergent bilingual and I go to one of the wall-to-wall schools, is that a program that I'm eligible to attend?
Absolutely. We actually had that question at one of the information clinics that we went to.
Okay, because we have a lot of students from, because what I'm seeing is, like, just a lot of families, it was easier for them to get into a wall-to-wall program if they were a heritage speaker, but not classified as emergent bilingual, but not into the school where they attended. What about Hart?
That's the same. So what we're doing now, the work that we're doing right now, is we're looking at where families that are impacted are zoned, like what is their zone school. So we're looking at what school are they attending now and what is their zone school by address, right? And looking to see if that campus has dual language programming, so we can get, as Superintendent Segura was saying, as close as possible to say, yes, we have seats for these students to go and continue.
So any of these programs from our website that have a 20, 26, 27 dual language campuses?
That is the list of dual language campuses for next year.
Have two-way, or will have two-way?
They have dual language programming, and again, what the difference is between a one-way and a two-way is the makeup of the students in the classroom. So some classrooms actually will turn into two-ways because as we bring more non-emergent bilingual students into the classroom, we'll have that balance, right, that meets the definition of a two-way.
Okay, and then hopefully my questions are helpful, and I know that, y'all are working to continue to try to help families, and I know February seems early from a public school standpoint, but that's just if we're comparing to ourselves on how hard it is for us to do it. That is late. That is late if you are in private preschool. That is late if you are looking at charters in private schools and your school has been closed and you don't know where you're going to go. Like, knowing in February can be far, far too late for many options and for us retaining families. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Additional, Trustee DeOrioste.
Yeah, I just wanted to take the opportunity to, as an example with the dual language, some things that I would like for consideration in an after action report, like how many students are ending up going to a lottery because of the migration of students and this, how many seats are there. I think that's a good example of where planning can improve, or evaluating how well we plan through this. I know it's a kind of expedited process. I would similarly with SPED, some metrics on how the students were moved and how we were able to staff. I think it would be both good for us for planning for the future, improving in the future, but also I know some of these community members that are kind of advocating so heavily, to give them some metrics would be helpful. So, just as an example, if we say, well, there were some students that had to go in the lottery, but we can really define what caused that or where it was, so that there's some understanding of the process besides us just saying, well, it wasn't as many as it seemed like it was. Just some pieces like that, because I think it will also help the community. you're giving a firm commitment. You're saying this is what we're trying to do. I don't want to say 100%. I think it would be helpful if after the fact you can say this is how close I got to the mark of what I was trying to do, to balance that out and give the community a little sense of some accountability, but at least a performance report, so they can have more confidence. They can say that's how likely I think it is.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It's good feedback.
Thank you, Trustee Hunter.
I appreciate data. I think data is valuable. But no plan ever survives contact with the enemy. We can have all the data numbers that we want. People gonna do what they wanna do. And you're not gonna know what they wanna do until the first day. And even after that, they might not even be there before a couple of days. So those numbers are always going to be fluid. Ask me how I know. Teaching like 3 people in your room, then 5 people in your room is like, what's going on? Because kids are coming and going all the time. Add to that mix, we're gonna provide numbers, and our community is gonna see those numbers, but they need to understand the numbers in context. The state of Texas has just said that you can go to school online. If you live in Austin, you can go to school in West Texas. You can go to school in East Texas and not have to leave your house. The state of Texas has said, you know what? We're gonna take public school money and we're gonna give that to private schools so people can take care of that. And not only today did they say, also let's go for pre-K 3. Let's bring it all in. There's a lot of numbers out there and we can set these targets and we can do what we want. The thing to do is if we want to have people come back, then we have to treat them like family. And that's just what it's going to take. But I'm telling you, I don't know how much I want people fiddling with numbers that ain't gonna mean nothing on day one. If that's what the will of the board is, then let's get those numbers. But let's understand, people gonna do what they're gonna do, and they're gonna have to do what's best for them. And as I have said since the beginning, I do not want to lose one, but you gotta do what you gotta do for you and yours. Thank you.
Thank you. I have just a couple of questions. On slide 3, the transition system support slide, thank you, Trustee Kaufman, for mentioning MEAC and making sure it's there, since so many of our campuses and our families either have come from dual language campuses that are closing, or our families need that. And I appreciate that being on there. I do have a question related to that and Trustee Singh's comments about our family. I'm glad that the principals will be meeting with the steering committee, but I also wonder how the steering committee is getting input from staff and from families who are also impacted. And I have vast respect for principals and their knowledge of a campus, their knowledge of a campus community, but it's a different perspective. And if we're going to get this right, we also have to get this right for our staff, and we also have to get this right for our families. And I feel like those are important voices that I don't see reflected in the work of the steering committee, and I have real concerns about what that's going to lead to. I see that your planning committees at the campuses, that there will be a way to pull that in, but I still worry that it's not going to reach the decision makers at the top who are making those decisions. And I'm wondering how that perspective is going to filter up, how that's going to be heard and considered and incorporated.
So we have communicated with all the individual schools that I am the contact person. So we are engaging and we've provided some guidance around how to form campus transition team that would include parents and staff members that are interested in serving and helping us do the transition work. So ones that are really willing, ones that have the desire to do the work alongside with our campus leaders, so that their team and our transition team, we would touch base quite frequently. On top of the meetings that we're doing virtually, we're actually having lots of in-person meetings, and that would be what we're actually planning to do starting from the second week of January. We're having joint meetings with our campus principals to bring together and to discuss the formation of campus transition teams. So once and I have vocalized the fact that we need to do this with respect, and we need to do this with care, and we need to do this with knowing that every individual campus culture is very different, and we want to acknowledge that. So the driving force of some of the decisions that are going to be made on what transition activities we're going to do, how are we going to remember our legacy, some of those activities are going to be decided by the campus team. And then that would be translated into our individual campus tracker for individual campuses. So every campus that is going through transition has their own individual tracker with suggestions and recommendations, and we're going to provide templates and whatever support that they need. But really, the decision makers and the voices that are going to be coming forth to make this transition work smooth and with compassion is going to be the campus folks. So I want to ensure that you hear that from me.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I know this group to be a very caring group that really understands that. So thank you for that. I'm reassured by that. I have a question on the next slide, the engagement, or a couple of slides later, the engagement opportunities slide. Yes. With the stakeholders, and we have so many community partners. We have our neighborhoods that care deeply about our schools, that have a real investment in a healthy public education district in our community. How are we going to pull in stakeholders who are missing from here? So many of the service providers on campus, our district-wide partners that work at multiple schools, like Communities in Schools, or, I'm thinking about the Avance, the Mind Pop with Creative Learning. So Andy Roddick, the list can go on and on and on, right? How are we including all of those voices of other groups that also care about our schools and have something of value to bring to this process?
Yeah, so President Boswell, it's not going to happen. President Boswell, no, absolutely. So I think one of the things that we were trying to do with this slide was to show that there are district-wide stakeholders, but each plan is going to be tailored to the school and the community. And within that plan, they'll have their own engagement effort. And so within that effort, I would expect to bring in, CIS if they're at that school, or, whoever may be tied to that school or tied to the community. There are lots of them. So, I probably could have maybe said other local partners or something like that, but we will have separate plans for each of these schools. What I can do is go back and create clarity that it is our intention to bring those voices into the overall effort, but it is really going to find itself in the campus level engagement plan. And so that's probably a miss on my part, just not putting a statement in there around kind of the intent to engage with those partners, but there are many, many, many of them.
Thank you. I just heard other local partners, so thank you. I think that's fantastic. And like you said, every campus has a unique mix of partners, which is part of the beauty of what we do. So thank you for that.
And just be responsive to that question regarding the campus transition team. What we can do in our next presentation, or as an amendment to this presentation, is just create like a slide that shows the structure of it. It's looser right now because we're getting feedback from our principals and from our schools about what it could look like. I don't want to say that it's going to have these 3 people and these 2 people, but I can somehow notate that in the document moving forward, just so it's clear that that is part of the work. It's something we discuss. They are being built, but the structure of them are going to look a little bit different. So I can do that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And then I really want to reiterate something I've heard from several of the trustees. We are hearing from families who feel like they are getting conflicting information, confusing information, things they were told that were understandings they had that are not now what they're being told or what the rules are going to be. There's a lot of confusion, and the people we're hearing from are people who so very much want to keep their kids in our district, want to remain part of our district, and people who are really scared that, I think it feels like a game of musical chairs to a lot of our families, where they're going to not have the options they need, and they're going to get to whichever the announcement date is and find out that they don't have a place that works for them. And we know that people sooner, as Vice President Willie Chu said, people have to put deposits down for private schools if that's something they're considering. The vouchers, people are going to have to apply for vouchers. Charter schools have deadlines, real or artificial, but they have deadlines when you're supposed to make a commitment. And the longer we wait, the more families we're going to lose just to that fear that they're not going to have a landing place. And I really worry a lot about that because February is very, very late. You know, most families know, many families know long before that where they're going to be. And we know that families with younger kids have to plan for childcare for their younger children and may have to find new childcare, which is not an easy thing in this city in this moment. You know, there's so many have to find after-school care, have to find adjust sports schedules, have to adjust carpools. I mean, there's work schedules perhaps, so much.
And Chair, we're at the budgeted time for
Thank you
this
very much.
item. Thank you.
So I have real concerns about just how quickly we can help families understand what their options are. And just want to share that clarity, and I hope that what we're hearing from families, that you're hearing from families, and I see some of it incorporated in what's been brought here, and our families, I really appreciate the people who are sharing what they need to make this work for them so they can remain part of our district community. So thank you for that.
And Chair and Superintendent, for the academic planning part that we did not get to do within the budgeted time period, how would we like to share that with the community, with the public?
I can do it a couple different ways. You know, really the intent of that presentation, and this is kind of why I wanted to go all the way through, was to just communicate the work that we're committed to do in the spring semester and have a conversation with our trustees about how that look works and how that will impact other elements of what we're doing as an organization, including boundary changes, feeder pattern alignment. And so that was really the intent. It was not meant to be into the weeds. It was really in an effort to establish timelines and milestones. Happy to send it out. I'm happy to just get any feedback in a very brief period of time. But the intent was not to focus on the work. It was really milestone, phasing, timeline. So I don't know, Trustee Willie.
I would Superintendent Segura, I think for future present, because this was budgeted at an hour. And so we can always get a presentation from the administration, but this is the only opportunity that trustees have together in the same room to ask questions for the public. And so it's, you know, some of our questions were not addressed, or the public's questions weren't addressed by the presentation. And I think it's hard because we all have a lot of questions and there's a lot to say.
Thank you for that. And I would love to hear from trustees. This is something our community has a strong interest in. Are we comfortable going over a little bit with budgeted and maybe get the presentation and submit questions in writing? How are we feeling about hearing about the academic roadmap?
I would suggest the opposite, because it's available as a presentation that is public and available for all to see, that we do one round of questioning with 2 minutes each. We have 15 minutes and we move on.
I'm great with that. We good with that? Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you all. And for anyone from the public who is watching, this is under the superintendent's report, and it is one large PowerPoint with both pieces. So who has a question about the academic vision and the process for working on that? Trustee Hoffman.
I just have one question, and I would just like a better understanding of what the decision-making and who the decision-makers will be in that. I see a lot about what's going to be decided, but I don't really understand who's going to be doing the work and who's going to be engaged in those decisions and how.
Should we respond, or do you want us to? Okay.
I would like to respond, and then within my 2 minutes, which that's my only question, so have at it.
Yeah, so, you know, this work is going to include several potential changes to policy. Much of this is a continuation of the work that we actually started in a retreat that we had with Ashley Paz, you know, establishing theories of action, developing the academic vision. We will have our part as the administration, but the idea is to come back to the board, maintain connectivity, and then as we move towards those milestones, update the policies. Now, in the plan, you'll see lots of opportunities for engagement, different groups that we'll be working with, but at the end of the day, it is going to be kind of the administration's work informed and kind of guided by board input. And also in the plan, you'll see the 2 milestones that are called out as policy approvals, which is part of the work, right? We really want to make sure we get that codified in policy.
So that's my only question. I would just ask that you communicate a little more clearly what that engagement looks like. I didn't really see in this presentation the engagement components, but that can happen later.
And this was really meant to be about timeline. I really wanted a broad stroke just to introduce it and really to show if this is how we choose to spend our spring semester, it's going to require this level of time, right? I mean, really into the summer. That's really what I wanted to reinforce.
I think there's some, in the timeline, there's some future opportunities for updates about the work, and if it's a little bit smaller. Sorry, you passed your time?
Yes, thank you.
If it's a little bit smaller piece of it, then we can talk more about that engagement.
Thank you, Dr. Maxwell.
Thank you. Who else has a question? Trustee DeOriosto, you want to just go down the row? Let's do that.
Yeah, because I want to piggyback onto the engagement part, and I'm trying to think the best way to do this. I'm curious if in the process that we've already been through, there was so much community engagement. I'm curious what we can do differently or how we can improve on the engagement that we've done so far when we're going to get into something that is potentially even more nebulous for the public to understand or for the constituents to understand, so that we get meaningful feedback from them.
Yeah, so one of the things that I heard loud and clear, and please correct me if I'm wrong, trustees, was that, and I agree with this, that the level of work and the need to bring community voice in is absolutely like paramount. It has to be part of the work. So when you look back to the large initiatives that we've had, whether it's bond-related work or tax credit, like these big things, we tend to build out thoughtful engagement opportunities along the way. We collect that information, we go back, it's iterative. In many cases, you've had advisory committees assist us along the way. I'm envisioning and expecting that to be part of this work as well. So it will be there. It's going to be a pretty significant lift. It's required because this is one of the biggest things that we're going to do together with this board and this administration. A lot of that detail will be kind of laid out as we move forward, but that's why it's not a 3-month process. It really is going to 6 to 9 months, and then some of the elements of deliverables will continue on for the better part of 18 months. So that's how we're approaching it. It's kind of that level of effort.
So I think I would just, bookend that with, we're going to have more stuff coming after this, and this is kind of what I was speaking to earlier, is the repetition of the process that we're going through. And so I would really love to see, in doing this engagement piece, how we're intentionally looking to improve upon past engagement pieces and just keep that going on.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but I just want to know, for 14 minutes will become 40 minutes in a hurry if we don't monitor our time.
Thank you. Vice President Ulichu. Okay. Yeah, I would love a written update for the board, maybe the community, about what exactly that engagement will look like. Will there be a committee? How will our staff be involved? How will our students be involved? Our families, our partners, our community. There are a lot of perspectives and expertise, and I think to inform the administration's work as you bring recommendations to us, that would be really helpful for people to know.
So based on that comment, I'm hearing that because I do agree the expectation is that we do have that type of, that level of thoughtful engagement, but that's going to require time, which means that we're not picking up the boundary work until, late into the spring semester into the summer. And really that's what I really want to point out is that we want to make sure we're aligned before we pick that work up again. And we don't want the end date to go too far because there are impacts operationally. So that was really the intention of this conversation here. So to meet the expectation of the board, it just means that, we're going to take the time, right? So I'm happy to do that, but it's going to be aligned with this current milestone, not an adjusted milestone schedule based on feedback from y'all.
That seems fair. Yes, thank you. Okay, Trustee Singh.
So you don't have to answer these questions, but well, actually, one question I do have is the baseline academic plan in here somewhere that we had talked about a few months ago.
Yeah, so it is one of the,
It's embedded in there somewhere.
correct.
Okay,
And
that's
I
all I
think-
need to know.
And one of the things we were going to do, and I decided not to do it, was define all the
That's okay,
terms.
that's fine, that's fine. And then, is any part of this going to be looking at, like, doing a CTE
Oh, yeah.
audit or something?
Oh, yeah.
And like looking at where things are located?
Absolutely. One of the things that we talked about, we're going to have a conversation around, our district's philosophy around magnets, single gender
Okay,
schools.
that's really,
Joel,
really critical.
That to me, and it's in here, I don't want to
It's a
call it
small
out.
bullet point in curriculum and instruction
Okay.
for program definition and alignment.
Thank
And that's
you.
what that addresses.
I figured, but I just wanted to make sure. And then when we talk about the community engagement work, I would be curious to know how the long-range plan fits into this, because that was a really great effort that you led.
Yeah.
And wanted to see how we were going to not lose that
Oh, yeah.
work. Yeah.
No, thank you, Trustee Singh. That's very much kind of in my mind and in our approach is to leverage the good things that have come out of the work that preceded this effort. But I also want to revisit it to make sure we're still aligned. There's some things that came about that we've actually already completed. There are things we need to refine. And then make sure this board is still aligned with that body of work as well. It's going to be important. So yes, and I would also say, back to Trustee Kaufman and Trustee Odiosi's point, that's another effort that we completed at LRP. That was a lot of engagement, a lot of time with community, and we had a great deliverable. I expect that same approach here.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate this.
I forgot the LRP. It's like the big effort that we forgot.
Seems like 10 years ago. It's only like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Thank you. Trustee Hunter, any questions?
It's not going to be a question. It's something I want the superintendent to report back. I know that we began looking at curriculum for middle schools. We kind of have elementary aligned now and have all of the supports around elementary, and we see that that's bearing fruit. Middle school, definitely, I know that we had started talking about that and working with that. I really want to see where we landed on that, what we're going to be doing, because it's not called the lost middle for no reason. And so I really think that an aligned curriculum, especially with our transitory population, will be helpful. So just want an update on where we are with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Foster. All right. Thank you all for this. We are going to move on now to, and thank you for the work. I know our community is very eager for this, so thank you, and I appreciate the way it will inform further work. Next up is our budget update and 3-year plan to restore fund balance, and I know our time is tight, so I hope we can be efficient with the presentation and our questions.
And Chair, how many minutes would you like for questions at the end?
Josh, we need to be
Splitting the
finished by
time.
8. Is that, we have 30 minutes before we need to get through what we need to get through, is that correct? 30 minutes budgeted for this part. Okay. Can we do 10 minutes, no more, for the presentation and 20 for questions? Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Katrina Montgomery, Chief Financial Officer. She's here to present the fiscal year 2025-26 budget update and 3-year plan to restore fund balance.
Hello, trustees and Superintendent Segura. We're going to go over our 3-year update for our Austin ISD financials, and we're going to start with FY 24-25, which was the last fiscal year. We've gone through the audit. The audit committee had the board audit committee has met, and so we're looking that we're going to land the year at $74.1 million deficit. We started off with $78.2 million, and then you can see all of these things that you remember in January of 24-25. We had a projection that our deficit would grow to $110 million. And then we ended at June of 2025. Our unaudited number is $74.1 million. So when you look at the two, you see 78.2 to 74.1. We were able to decrease the deficit by $4 million, but the work was that we had additional expenses of $52 million. We had property values. Property values decreased for $14 million. We had SHARs. So when you look at the whole picture, it looks much better than the $4 million net here. And so now we're going to move forward to FY 25-26. And when you look at FY 25-26, we want to talk about enrollment because everyone is aware that the district lost 3,000 students. And if you look at the third column from the right, you see FY 25-26 adopted. The top line is our district enrollment was 72,303. Our average daily attendance was 64,100. And then if you go to the far right, our second 6 weeks, our enrollment has decreased from 72,303 to 69,198. So that's the 3,000. And our average daily attendance is for 64,100 to 62,522. And what is important about this slide is you can see that the gap is very minimal. So even though we had an enrollment decrease, our average daily attendance did not dip as much as our enrollment. And that has a lot to do with the work that our campuses are doing and that the campuses that Carla De La Rosa and her team are doing. So this slide is our FY 25-26, and we're going to talk about in the second column to the left, our unaudited financials showed us landing at an 18.89%, and we remembered that we were going to say, originally we said we were going to be at 15%, so we were over that when we ended the year. Our adopted budget said that we'd stand at 15.10%. We gave an update in September, and now we're looking at November of the ending of for our second 6 weeks. And so what you see here in the middle, you see some strategies and you see land sales. One of the big things that's changed from our adopted budget to our November second 6 weeks is we've taken into consideration the enrollment/ADA change. We've had property value changes as well, and we also had the exemptions that we talked about. There's a land sale that has been taken off. The team is still drastically working very hard to make sure that we can get the land sale, but if we don't get the land sale, it will come in next year. So general fund operating expenditure spend, this is where we are from July through November. And what this document shows is our budget threshold, which if you look at November, it's $428 million. That's where we should be for our spend for November. And our year-to-date spend is at 400.8, which means our spend is under the threshold. So this means that the work that we're doing in reducing spend is working, but it also means that we need to continue to do that. And we have strategies that we'll discuss in a few slides. So here's our fund balance policy document. We've looked at this, and so remember when we created it, we said FY 24-25, we were going to do 15%, 15%, 15%. So by FY 27-28, we would land at 20%. And one of the things Superintendent Segura and I have always talked about is not waiting to get to 27-28 to get to 20%. So with the unaudited financial statements for 24-25, we've landed at 18.89%. For 25-26, we're going to land at 17%. For 26-27, 18.5%, and 27-28, we're going to land at 20%. So the 3 years, 25-26, 26-27, and 27-28 are targeted, and we're going to talk about on the next slide how we're going to get there. Because we wanted to make sure we weren't just reporting numbers, but we were telling you some of the strategies and the things of how we were going to get there. For FY 24-25, I'm not going to spend a lot of time because this is stuff is all the things we know. We had Vader, we did a hiring freeze, we did a spending controls. Those are all the things that help us get to the 18.8% at the end of FY 24-25. For FY 25-26, some of the strategies we're doing for this year, we've already done our central office restructure. That happened at the end of last year and took effect this year. Hiring freeze for external only. Spending controls, we're going to reduce our P card limits like we did last year. Our spending controls take effect instead of March, we're going to do it in January. We're still working to get the highest interest rate possible, so we should have additional interest. We're going to have campusing, non-staff leveling. So if a campus decreases in the number of students, we're going to decrease the funds that they receive for non-staffing dollars. Property monetization, we were saying previously that we thought that would be 2. Now it's 1 property. If we get the additional property, that's only going to help us this year. If we don't, the property is still going through with the monetization. If it doesn't happen this year, it will happen next year. And then the enrollment strategy that you heard Victoria and her team discuss earlier. So FY 26-27, we're going to have a master schedule evaluation, and we're going to talk a lot about campus staffing guidelines re-envision. We have to re-envision this because we know that 87% of our budget is staffing, and 66% of that is campus staffing. And so we have to start looking at how we're staffing our campuses, how are we going to proceed going forward. We're going to continuously pursue additional grant and state funding opportunities, tiered non-staffing release. So what that means is instead of giving the campuses 100% of their budgets and then try to control them in January, we're going to tier the way that we release their funds. We're doing a stipend evaluation. I know that's been asked for. Go back and look at all of our stipends. In 26-27 to monetize 1 to 3 properties. We know that there's going to be a reinvestment in our turnaround campuses and enrollment strategy phase number 2. In FY 27-28, we're going to continue our master schedule evaluation, continuing to improve upon our campus staffing guidelines, and continue to pursue additional grants and property monetization. So this slide here, I won't spend a lot of time on this, but I do want the board to be clear that the finance department is getting out and making sure we're talking to campuses and the community about what are we thinking about. The finance department has visited 83 campuses so far this year, and so we're making sure that we have this connection and we're building the relationship. In our ad hoc committee meeting that was held on December 15th, so earlier this week, we spent some time talking about what's going on with the transition plans, with enrollment, but we also spent a lot of time talking about the re-envision of the budget, which is going to be a key to how we're going to proceed for next fiscal year. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Montgomery. I appreciate it and appreciate the thoroughness and the efficiency. Thank you. Trustees, who has questions? Trustee De Urio, stay first.
For the property monetization, the current one that's getting moved, is that the Rosedale campus, or is it related to Rosedale?
The current one is Brooke.
Okay.
No, he's asking the one that's moved.
Oh, moved, yes.
And it's moved out of fiscal year. So just to be clear, it's not moved off, it's just that it's not possible to close in the current fiscal year, so I can't take credit for it in this budget.
I understand. I just want to caution for future and going into the budget planning. I've kind of raised this before, but I want to look at the community piece around the property monetization because it's such a part of the strategy moving forward, and we just need to really, really refine that process. So, because I'm concerned if we're going to constantly have delays, that's going to affect the efficiency. And I'm not saying it because of, I'm not making a performance statement here. I'm saying a process statement. We need to be thoughtfully addressing that so that it's going to be smoother and smoother every time we go through it.
Yeah, I'd welcome a conversation in executive session about how we could be smoother as a system.
Thank you. Additional questions? Trustee Singh.
Yeah, I think like in the last few years, we've been, dealt with little surprises here and there that have resulted in, greater deficits than we would have wanted. And so I just wanted to ask if we could get some sense of like, what are its potential risks that are not in this document, even if it's a small risk? And you don't have to answer it all right now, but I just want to make sure that next time we talk about this, there's a slide that says like, these are things that are risks. Like for example, I don't know if our first rating could go down because we borrowed money to meet payroll, and if that affects our bond rating. Like those are some of the kinds of things I want to know and how that would have a fiscal impact. Risks like decreases in enrollment. There's a lot of assumptions in here, I'm guessing, about enrollment, and they aren't really listed out. And so I want us to really go there and be like, okay, well, what happens if we have like a 10% drop in enrollment? And how does that impact the budget? Are there risks happening from, the legislative like from legislative things that are going to be happening. So like this probably has some assumptions, and this is very clear, but this is probably, I don't know how conservative this is, so, want to see different.
I think, so there's the modeling, and then there's the communicating and having a conversation around what we think the risks are and how impactful they're going to be, and the probability of them occurring, right? That's how you quantify a risk. And so I think what I've thought through lots of them, and Katrina and I have, we can put those on a slide or two, and then I think it's worth the conversation, because at the end of the day, you have to take that risk and you have to determine how much of an impact does it have on your budget. My assumption may be very different, but my perspective is very different than maybe someone else's. And so I think that's probably a good conversation to have with the board. At the federal level, there are changes that happen, and, it could be a profound impact. Would I build a budget around, I think that's what we have to talk about. So what we can do, maybe what we do is identify the list of potential risks. We quantify them as the impact, like bond rating may have an impact on interest earnings, but it's probably not going to have an impact on your overall budget. So there's going to be an impact, but it maybe doesn't end up impacting bottom line unless there's an impact on the interest earnings, which then gets netted out at the bottom. So there's different ways that it would have an impact. From a bond rating, from a issuance of bond debt, there would be an impact there, but that wouldn't show up on your 199 budget. So I think what we can do is maybe identify the risks. Let's categorize them in some way. So as we can talk about is, how it's actually going to impact our overall budget, not just 199, but also bond dollars, and then come back and have a conversation, because we need to hear from you all, and let's have a conversation around the probability of it occurring and the impact of its occurrence, and then we can say, okay, how does that fit into the budget? Because that's really what we try to get to.
For sure, and I would definitely want to see enrollment figures in there too, like different enrollment scenarios
like
as well.
X percent.
Absolutely.
But so one thing I would say is the enrollment figures have to be tied to some, like if it's just enrollment trend, unmodified, but then it's, okay, if the federal government does X, then that makes this a 2% decrease. Like I really want to make sure there's a correlation instead of just saying 8% or 2%. Like I want something to be like the kind of catalyst for an adjustment. That's where I think the conversation would be helpful.
Yeah, vouchers, for example, and just but there are other things that are just more local too. Mm-hmm. Like if people are just, like if we don't do enrollment right, or, if it still takes 2 hours for family to register, that does have an impact too. So there are things in our control as well. So I just don't want any surprises.
I don't want surprises.
And we keep getting them, and it's, let's just, yeah.
Yeah, and I think I do want to point out, we had a very difficult year at the end of, this year has been difficult in general, but spring 2025, when we were developing the budget for this year, we were having very difficult conversations around, are we going to stay above 15%? And I think given that we're able to end up above 18%, I think just reinforces like how much we can do if we control our budget and control spending, and we spend to budget and we have thoughtful budgets. And so I know Katrina shared a slide and we were brief, but we showed a margin between our current expenditures versus budgeted. That is part of what contributed to that end adjustment, that increased fund balance. And so that's not the number, but I think it just demonstrates like none of that is in the overall budget that is in the previous slide. This is something that if we monitor and we're tight and we control, you're often going to, be in a better place, but you have to prepare for the worst, but I think it's all important that we talk about it all, because each one of these is going to have an impact on our budget. So that's why we ended at over 18%, but we're not saying 18% will be the target next year. Yeah. Right? That would be disingenuous, because I want to make sure I'm taking consideration of all the conditions around us.
Thank you. Trustee Foster.
Just really quickly, I'm admittedly kind of shoehorning a question that I just haven't been able to get an answer on. If we're talking about our budgeting and working with fidelity to whatever we lay out and being responsible with our decisions, way back in September, we voted to not extend the historic property tax exemptions, which should have $500,000 a year impact. And I've kind of asked over and over again, could this be revisited? And would it have an impact? So I don't need an answer now, but I would just like to get an answer. And it's troubling for me because we're talking about these big budget challenges. And then if I just happen to notice a single item that's, I don't know, a couple $1 million, I'm wondering how many other items of hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars are we oopsie not noticing. So I would really love direct response and contact, not now, but very soon. And that also I take it as a note of caution from a fiduciary responsibility standpoint to look really closely at the decisions we as a board make and at the decisions that the administration makes as it kind of looks in the couches for spare change.
Thank you. And we are looking in the couch for spare change. Yeah, Trustee Hunter?
I need to go back to slide 5 if we can. So I want to preface this by saying, I have a child in school. If she's dealing with something, she don't got to go to school. She just don't have to. I keep her at home, right? But her attendance is really pretty decent. But so when she tells me, today is not the day, I can't do it, I don't send her. These are crazy numbers. What is going on? Like, whose office is over attendance? Like, why the deficit?
So,
Are kids sick? I mean, what's going on?
So it's actually improved. It's improved significantly. I would say that this is a vast improvement to where we were 3 years ago, like vast improvement. So average daily attendance, we had our chronic absenteeism, constrained progress measure. We have, Carla and her team have been really intentional about making sure we're taking attendance in a thoughtful way, that it's consistent across the district. Taking it incorrectly could cost you millions of dollars over the course of the year. You're never going to get to 100%, right, for the reason that you just mentioned. It's also not true that every student is equal to one day. When you have pre-K3 or pre-K4, it's a half day, right? So that student is with us for a full day, but we actually get 0.5 ADA. There are other instances when you get 0.8. There are different ratios. So I want to be really clear. I genuinely believe that the data shows that we've actually improved quite significantly.
Okay.
And I can go back and maybe show the last 3 years, because we've probably, I don't know how many percentage points we've increased, but it's been several. And this thing moves the needle. And I can also compare against other school districts, if that's helpful, Trustee Hunter.
No, I don't want to do any more work on it. I was just shocked. Now that you're talking, I remember maybe a year ago, in our one-on-one, you actually did mention this and that the things you were doing to improve it and to work on it. And now it just shook me up right now.
Yeah, it has a huge impact on our system, but the tighter that you get, the bigger, the more likely you are to get the compensation that you are staffing for, right? Because we staff based on enrollment, but unless that ADA,
based on,
correct.
Yeah, got
correct.
it.
That's
So
exactly
I think I want to take a few seconds of our opportunity because I think it's important. One, to say that the way the state of Texas does it is dumb, and that the only way that can be changed is legislative. And so when you're looking at people, I think that's something you should consider. And then the second thing is that it costs a lot of time and money to find out where kids are. Because I'm assuming we're not just sitting around saying, oh, she didn't come for the last week. Somebody's having to do some work on this. Mm-hmm. And so if you want to give me a number, I'd really like to know the number that we spend chasing down kids because ADA. That's what I'd like to know.
Yeah, I can work with Carla and the team to quantify that. There may be some assumptions and there may be some subjectivity.
Be conservative, because I think it's going to be a crazy number anyway. But I think I want the community to know that it's a bigger picture. So everybody, and here's something, I just going to take some more time because this is just in my heart right now. Once you're mad at the school board, it's too late. It's too late. It's too late. The time to be mad was before it got to us. Because if we making the decision, it's the last, that's it. And so I think a lot of people have found out. Somebody was like, well, how do we go now? I was like, it's a biennium. This ain't got to wait. Got the next one. But you're going to be there for the next one, I bet, right? But that person was like, let's go. I was like, there's nothing to go. Ain't nobody, they back in their districts. So I think that's important for people to understand, like, the bigger picture. And I think a lot of our parents are saying, like, hey, I just didn't understand all of this, and I'm just now getting hip to it. And so if we have that data, then let's share it with them and say, this is what we spend because we don't do enrollment and we do ADA. And how many states, Lynn, do ADA? Because I know you know.
Very, very, very few.
I just want to reinforce how great the work is. I mean, moving by a couple percentage points in a system this large is millions and millions and millions of dollars. And so we started this initiative, I think, in the spring 2024, and it's really proven to generate revenue for us that otherwise was being lost. So I'm going to reinforce that. I'll come back at a future update with like the percentages because I think it's important to just show it because it does get confusing. ADA is not one-to-one. So I'll do that. I'll make a commitment to do that.
And Trustee Henner, I want to be sure I answered your question correctly. The vast majority of states fund based on enrollment, not attendance. Yeah. And there are other ways to measure it. We don't have to get paid to expect students to be there. There are other ways to measure that and hold us accountable for that. Thank you. Additional questions from anyone down here? Okay, thank you. I do want to thank people. It is upsetting to see our enrollment dropping. It is encouraging to see our ADA dropping less than our enrollment has dropped. So thank you to everyone who has been part of that. Thank you to our families who are doing the work to get our kids to school. And I know we are hearing from families that some of our students are staying home to take care of younger siblings, that there's so many factors going on with this. It's a very complicated system, and I appreciate the work that's being done to make sure our students are there. So thank you for that. I would love to hear more, not today, but appreciate it's coming up in January, you said, to talk about our enrollment strategy.
Yes.
Thank you. You can balance your budget by bringing more in or by cutting more. Bringing more in feels a whole lot better than cutting more. So thank you for that. Really look forward to learning more about that. I have a question on slide 6, the column all the way to the right, where we show $60.15 million in strategies, 8.1 identified, 52.05 million in strategies pending. Are those pending strategies, or are those identified strategies with the realized savings pending?
So there are pending strategies here on this FY 25-26 column. So if you see like spending controls, we're going to try to figure out what do we get from that. Vacancy savings is also another one. Hiring freeze. So there are additional strategies that we now need to go back and say, what dollar amount do we feel comfortable saying? And it's going to be conservative. It's always going to be conservative. What dollar amount do we feel that we're going to be able to attain to get to that additional 52.05?
Okay, so we're showing a big number that we don't have focus on yet. That's a really big number.
Focus in as far as granularity regarding the quantity, the
But
value.
we know the types of things we're
Correct.
going to be doing. We just haven't assigned numbers to them yet.
And-
Okay, that is helpful
and-
to me. Thank you.
And I just want to reinforce the timing of one of the strategies moving off. But I mean, again, that could come back in. There's a big number that's going both ways. And one of the things I'm always mindful of is if you make cuts and then something changes that you know is going to change and it's a month different than what you initially stated, we need to really talk about, are you going to take that cut even though you know that it's going to be realized in a near future date. So that is, we're being hyper transparent in how we're showing it. But it's important to talk about that. Months matter here, and we have to track the fiscal year. But as a system, we're in the forever business. So we will provide more clarity as we have it on the cost savings.
Thank you. And I appreciate the accuracy. I appreciate budgeting for what we're actually spending. I know that hasn't always been done in the past. So, thank you for it is gaining more clarity and more focus and more precision and more transparency for our community and our planning. So thank you for all of that.
Katrina and I want to get to the point where those trend lines are almost on top of each other, right? That's really where we need to be.
That would be a great place to be. Thank you. Also want to just share appreciation for the expected spend versus the actual spend. I know that represents daily decisions by thousands of people and really want to share thanks for that. That's a whole lot of very small decisions that are adding up to really big savings and want to acknowledge that system-wide work and thank you to everyone who's making those choices. Really appreciate that.
I want to shout out, our principals have a big role in this. We meet with our principals, different leadership groups, and we're testing different ways to add controls, and then we realize as we're testing them, it creates a frustration on the campus. And so a lot of the time when we're working with our principals, that's what we're doing is trying to be really clear about why this method is the method that we're going to choose, where we can add flexibility to ensure they spend what they should be spending. And sometimes it's just creating different avenues for different types of money is what we're seeing time and time again as being one of the challenges, but certainly something that we can overcome.
Thank you. I'd like an update at some point about the strategies we identified for this year and how well they're going. We talked, one of our big savings was going to be reducing the number of special education contractors versus in-house. I'd love it can be a written update, it can be an update posted on the budget section of our website, but really having an understanding, we have targets we've made, promises, we've targeted things. How well are those working? Are they working as we were intended? I don't need an answer today, but transparency about that I think would be helpful. Really want to echo Trustee Singh's question about looking at our different risks of reduced enrollment, of all kinds of things, and making sure we're planning with a spectrum of possibilities. I'm good at worrying, so thank you for helping me worry in a productive way. And then want to talk about, just on slide 9, specifically about campus staffing guidelines revision, and would love a little detail about what types of things are in that bucket. Is that where we're talking about perhaps the 7 of 8, rethinking everyday PE, talking about librarians? Like, what are we talking about there?
Yeah, so
class size, what is it?
No, it could ultimately evolve into that at a future date. I mean, really what we're talking about now is as programs get built, as classes make, right, what we're seeing is inconsistency in how they're making across the system. This occurs quite significantly at secondary, where you may have a unique class that has 4 or 5 students in it. You staff because that's the section, and there's a certain certification. Maybe it's a CTE class. I'm not sure. We see this quite a bit of, but I don't want to call any one type out. And then because of the certifications, because of the master schedule, which is why master schedule is part of this as well, that allocation over the number of students being supported ends up being quite costly. And so we just need to really think through, the structure of the master schedule, make sure it's tight, make sure that we're providing the foundation in certain areas, no matter the number of students. An example is like choir. Sometimes choir makes, sometimes choir doesn't. If we as a system believe that, choir is fundamental and access needs to be provided at all middle schools, then we would provide the allocation. But is that true for every other type of offering? And that is what we're seeing inconsistently across the district. And when you have these larger middle schools and large high schools, it's a pretty big number. So we want to be on the same page as we move forward. So that's what that's about. That's a big part of it, is what I would say.
Okay, that's very helpful to know, because that's a very vague, and I know the goal here is to preserve the things that we know serve our students and that our community has told us are important. So that is very helpful. Okay, thank you all for this. Any further questions? We're ready to move on? All right, thank you so much for this. Really appreciate the update and the work, and we'll look forward to jumping into more right after the new year. So thank you, Ms. Montgomery, for all the work. Okay, Superintendent Segura, can you please introduce our next item?
President Boswell, I absolutely would love to do that. I'd like to invite out Joshua Junn, Executive Director of Governance and Accountability and Board Services, to share the update regarding a notice of intruder detection audit.
We're budgeted for 1 minute, all right.
All right, good evening. In the months of October and November 2025, there were 21 schools audited by TEA. 3 schools had 1 or more findings requiring corrective action. As a reminder, TEA is required to audit 75% of Austin ISD schools during the 25-26 school year. Currently, we have 35.8% of Austin ISD campuses that have been audited. And each of the past 2 years, TEA did end up auditing 100% of our schools. If there are any questions, we can answer them during the closed session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And trustees, questions we will take to closed session. Thank you. Appreciate the update. We will now move to items on our consent agenda. Trustees, are there any consent agenda items that anyone would like to pull for a separate vote? All right. Vice President Whitley Chu, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Yes, I move to approve items 6.1, 7.1 through 7.3, 8.1, 9.1 through 9.5, 10.1, 11.1 through 11.4, and item 12.1.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Trustees, any conversation? All right, having a motion from Vice President Willie Chu, a second from Trustee Hunter. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, please raise your right hand. And the motion passes by all those on the dais. Thank you. All right, we will now go into executive session. Thank you. One second, need to get to a page in my, okay. We will now recess the open meeting at 7:59 PM and move to executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code Sections 551.074, 551.072, 551.073, 551.087, 551.076, 551.0821, and 551.071. When we finish with executive session, we will briefly return to the open session to formally adjourn the meeting, and the adjournment will be recorded and included in all replays of tonight's meeting. Thank you for joining us, and have a good evening. We will now reconvene the open meeting at 10 o'clock p.m. Vice President Willie Chu, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I move to adjourn the meeting.
The meeting is adjourned at 10:01 p.m.